The Mountain of Unity. The Prince's True Followers. Jarmo Palamaki. In a distant land, the prince lived with his father, the king. The prince was a beloved and welcome guest in the homes of his subordinates. On the occasion of such a visit, the prince asked for the gathering of the whole nation. He had something particularly important to announce to them. When everyone had gathered, the prince told him that he would throw a great feast. Everyone would be welcome, but the celebration would take place at the top of a nearby mountain. The mountain was called the Ghost Mountain because no one who had climbed to the top of it had returned. However, the prince assured them that they did not need to be afraid. "I have been there myself," he said, "and now I am going there before you." After this, he disappeared from sight. Everyone was excited to participate in the celebration, even though climbing to the top of the mountain felt scary. That's why everyone started climbing up the slope, some only because they didn't want to look worse than the others. Not only was the mountain called the Ghost Mountain, but it also behaved magically. Everyone who climbed it experienced the ascent in their own way. For some, especially children, the ascent was relatively easy, while for others it seemed almost impossible. It also seemed that the slope always changed according to the expectations and fears of the hikers. On top of that, it showed completely unforeseen sides of itself, sometimes positively, but usually negatively, unexpectedly. Others struggled hard to get up, but they didn't seem to make much progress. Others, on the other hand, progressed easily through even the most difficult and dangerous climbs when they allowed joy and confidence to guide them. Those who made it easy to move forward tried to help and encourage others, advising them to change their expectations. But they would not listen to them and replied, "You are newbies. You have no experience. Just wait, and there will be trouble soon." The difficulties and disappointments of others discouraged some who had hitherto made good progress, and they soon found themselves entangled in the difficulties they feared. But others refused to give up their trust and quickly reached the higher levels of the mountain. Many of them began to consider themselves better than those left behind and attributed their problems to their own fault. Still, a few who had just overcome the difficult point of ascent stayed here to help those who followed, although few accepted such an offer of help because they thought they could do better themselves. Many of these helpers also began to be called stagnant and one-sided, even misguided, for emphasizing the importance of the passage. Some who had already made it to higher areas became good examples. Their route was closely followed, and soon they were made idols. Some struggled hard to reach such a position, and it became increasingly important to them how many followers they were able to gather. But through this, their attention shifted from the top, the route towards the top of the mountain, down, how to gather more followers. And they got lost and misled others into taking dangerous routes from which they easily plunged. Others, on the other hand, found that the mountain not only fulfilled their expectations, but also their wishes, as long as they hoped strongly enough. Soon they focused on creating a comfortable environment for themselves with mountain huts, where they could rest and admire the beautiful mountain scenery. Gradually, such people lost their desire to go up and stayed in their huts. "It's stupid to put in so much effort when you can enjoy the comforts," they concluded. In the meantime, the people had dispersed all over the slopes of the mountain. Everyone claimed that he was the prince's true follower, and that the prince had followed this particular route. There was a lot of disagreement, even bitter clashes between the different risers. Those involved in the clashes soon lost interest in rising up, because it was more important for them to prove the correctness of their own position and to fight for this truth. Because everyone went their own way, it was difficult for them to help each other in difficult places, and many slipped or stumbled because of this, plunging down the mountain. Wiser from this and remembering the prince's last instruction, remember to be in contact with each other. People began to gather the climbers into groups and even use ropes to bind the members of the group to each other, as mountaineers should. The groups that used ropes made the best progress in their ascension, although there were always those who did not want to lose their freedom or did not get along with their leaders, accusing them of moving too slowly and made themselves their own leaders. Such soloists usually rushed down soon and dragged others along as well. Many other members soon joined the successful groups, so it became a problem to keep such a large group together. Leaders were then so problem-oriented that they lost the ability to take their group forward, And when the journey happened to pass by an abandoned mine, where an innumerable number of leg chains were found, which had formerly been used to bind the slaves who worked in the mine, many of the leaders replaced the ropes with such chains, so that no one could leave the group anymore. However, the chains were so heavy that the ascent no longer worked. But the leaders didn't care about that because it was more important for them to chain the group to themselves. Different groups also attacked each other every now and then, claiming that they were the right group and that only their group would reach the top of the mountain. For these innumerable reasons, the ascenders were able to climb with difficulty. It was already getting dark, and only a few had reached the nugget of the mountain. The prince had lit a large fire at the top to help the climbers find their way around. Many saw this fire, followed it, and soon reached the top, but many also saw the fire, claiming it only as a bright star that would lead them astray, and followed the paths that they thought were right, but went astray, and many fell down the mountain. Just before midnight, a large group finally reached the top of the mountain. The others had already lost their desire and returned, holding the prince responsible for his problems and anger. Those who finally made it to the top of the mountain noticed that there were no more sides to the mountain. Every side of the mountain that led up to the top turned out to be right. At the top, it was no longer important which road each person had taken to reach it. They were all one with the prince and each other. Those who had given up climbing and returned heard that the prince had taken those who had reached the summit to feast at the king's castle. I can't say how this worked in practice. Perhaps the prince had built a cable car from the top of the mountain to the castle. These outcasts began to envy and hate those who had made it to the king's castle. They decided to go to the castle party by force. Since the guards did not let them in, they tried to destroy the whole castle by burning it. However, they were driven away, and those who tried to start the fire died from burns caused by their own fire. Those who made it to the king's palace enjoyed a huge celebration in the company of the king and prince, and they still haven't come back from there.